Thank you, everyone, for joining today's webinar on guest passes. It is one of our add-on features. It's an optional module you can purchase for your ClubExpress platform. Today, the guest passes module is one of our smaller optional modules. So today's webinar might be a little bit shorter than our normal module webinars, but we're going to go ahead and get started on it. Before I start on going over the guest passes module, I do want to go over a few bits of housekeeping. All of your microphones are muted. So if you have any questions, please enter those into the Zoom chat window. We do have Sam with us in the chat, and she will be helping with answering questions about the module along the way. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to enter those in the chat. We can get those answered for you. We also record all of these webinars and put them on our YouTube channel. So if you weren't able to make it today, or if you have to leave early, you can catch the rest of this webinar on our YouTube channel. If you do like our webinars, you can always go to clubexpress.com and click on calendar to see the roster of upcoming webinars. You can also register ahead of time from there. And if you register, you can enter questions that you have if there's anything you'd like to see demonstrated on a specific topic that you see on one of our upcoming webinars. If you do go view our recorded either webinars or training videos on our YouTube channel, we do love to ask if you would subscribe. It helps you keep up to date with all of the news. It's also where we put announcement videos for new ClubExpress versions, and you can always find our ClubExpress videos by going to YouTube and searching clubexpress.com, and that's dot spelled out, so it's ClubExpress DOTCOM. If you are using ClubExpress and are enjoying it, or if you have any opinions on the ClubExpress platform, we would love it if you would leave us a review. If you go to clubexpress.com/reviews, you'll see a number of ways you can leave reviews about ClubExpress product. And reviews really help our potential clients decide if ClubExpress is right for them. And that's really our goal, is just to make sure that the people are well informed before when they're looking for options for their organization. Without any further ado, I'll go ahead and get started on today's overview. We are looking at the guest passes module. It is an optional module, so it is not a standard feature. If you would like to activate it for your website, it is only a one-time fee of the current price is $1,000. Once you buy it, there's no more billing attached to that module. So once you have it for the rest of your tenure with ClubExpress. The purpose of the guest passes module is to enable members to purchase access for non-members for access to physical locations. That is kind of the intent. There are a few use cases where you can do guest passes for non-physical locations, but the intent is to allow members to access members only locations with guests. So let's say if your organization has a clubhouse or a swimming pool, tennis courts, golf courses, maybe private bike trails, any sort of physical location that is normally members only, but you want to allow members to get a guest pass for non-members. That's what this guest passes module is for. It allows your members to say, hey, I'm bringing 3 extra people with me when I go to the pool today. And so I'm going to either purchase or sign up a non-member ticket for access to this physical location. We're also going to go over our configuration of the module, where we'll talk about how to define, things like prices and how long they can stay, and when they're able to start booking those things, how far in advance. We're also going to take a look at how to manage existing passes once someone has purchased a guest pass for a non-member. We'll also take a look at the system email. It's the little notice that goes out to both administrators and the person that the guest pass is purchased for. So we'll take a look at that system email as well and go over how to configure that for you. And then we're also going to take a look at the user side. So how members actually reserve and pay for those guest passes, and we'll look at what the guest pass looks like to a non-member as well. We'll take a look at the email, and we'll take a look at how non-members are able to sign a waiver for liability for those physical locations. So the first thing we're going to go over is the module configuration. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over to our demo website, and we'll take a look at the pricing and how to list a contact email. And we'll take a look at a few of those other configuration requirements. So let me change my screen real quick. So now you should be seeing the Northwest Balloon Club. This is one of our demo websites. You'll see right now in the top right corner, I am logged in as Martin Smith. Martin Smith is a full administrator on this website. So being that the case, I have access to the control panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on the control panel over here. And in the club tab, you will find guest passes. Now you'll note some organizations might have a different name for this. So it'll be club or association, but either way, it'll show up in between the money and communications tab on the control panel. So whatever tab lies between money and communication, you can click on that right here. But for us right now, it's called the club tab. And because this is a module that both members and admins can interact with, it's going to show up here under website modules. And we'll see our guest passes module set up right here. Once we click on guest passes from the control panel, it'll take us to our guest passes manager, where we can do two things. We can actually configure the guest passes themselves, and we can manage the existing guest passes that have already been reserved. And you'll see I've already searched, and there are a few guest passes that I set up ahead of time. But for right now, we're going to start with looking at the configuration options. So on the screen, when you first land here, you'll see this little search field and the option to hide that search. And the next button over to the right is our edit options. And this is where we're going to make changes to the actual configuration of this module. So once I click on this edit options button, we're going to see this little pop-up screen where we can configure what it is like to purchase a guest pass for your organization. The first thing we'll see is price per day. And right now I have set this at $15. Now this price is going to change when someone purchases a guest pass, depending on how many days you're purchasing a pass for and how many people you are purchasing a pass for. So right now this price is for one guest for one day. If I am bringing a guest for 3 days, this would be $45 because it would be 3 times this fee. Or if I'm bringing, 2 guests for 2 days, it would be $60 because it's $30 for each guest that's coming. So this is always going to get multiplied by the number of guests and the number of days that they are being purchased for. The next thing down we have is contact email address. In many of our modules, you'll see an option to select a contact person for a module. The contact email address here is slightly different because there is a chance a lot of our organizations may have a physical location that isn't directly tied to another member. So in some cases, I've seen people where there are private bike trails where when a member purchases a guest pass, you want to notify whoever maybe manages that land to let people know that you can come and these people have purchased guest passes for the option to be there. Maybe the people that manage that physical location are not members. So we want to allow people to put in any email address here so that when a guest pass is purchased, this email address will get notified about that purchase, even if the person that manages that email is not already a member of your organization. Next down, we do have a minimum age. You do have the option to have an age limit on your guest passes. So you can say you have to be at least, say, 18 or 21 if it's maybe, a location that serves alcohol in the US. Most states require, you be 21 if you're in a location that serves alcohol. So maybe you can limit age that way, or maybe you don't allow, certain people of certain ages, you can actually limit the age. And what this will do is when someone is signing up, they have to enter the birth date of the person that is that the guest pass is being purchased for. And if the birth date does not mark them as being above this age, then it won't allow the guest pass to be purchased. You can leave this blank, and then, whatever age that they are entered for would not matter. They would be able to sign up no matter what age they are. Maximum days in advance. This is an option where you can either leave this blank if you don't care how far in advance someone purchases a guest pass for. But in most cases, if you don't want someone reserving guest passes, say 2 years in advance or something like that, you can limit it and say, I only want people booking, 1 or 2 weeks in advance. And so we can come here and say, 14 days. And that way you can't book a guest pass that far into the future. There is no minimum for this, but you can set a maximum number of days in advance saying, I can't book 4 weeks from now. It has to be within the next 2 weeks. The next configuration option on this screen is our waiver. This is intended as a release of liability for physical locations. So you can say, if you're biking on my trail, your safety is your own and we're not responsible for any, safety or injury. This is a great place if your organization has like a kind of boilerplate. Maybe you have a legal team or a legal consultant on in your organization. This is where you can come in and put in your safety requirement, and whoever is purchasing a guest pass, those guests will have to sign off on this safety waiver before they are able to attend in person. And we'll go over what that waiver looks like for those guests here in just a little bit. This is a required part of this module, so you do have to fill in at least some sort of sign off that the guests who are attending would have to acknowledge before they attend in person and are marked as being able to come to that physical location. And that's it on this screen for configuration. This is one of our smaller modules, and so it doesn't actually have as much configuration as some of our larger, more complex modules like the events module or maybe the reservation manager. There's a lot of parallels you'll notice between this module and the reservation manager, but this one is intended to be much easier for members to access and use, and it's very single purpose is the design behind this module. So once we have this page kind of configured and we've set all of this up, we are pretty much done with configuring the module. At this point, members can go ahead and start purchasing guest passes for their non-member guests. I do want to go over these other two buttons, and then we're going to take a look at how to manage guest passes once they come in. And then we'll also take a look at what the process looks like for members. But before that, we also have this option right here for reports. And if we click on that, we see we have 3 reports built into this module. We have guest passes for day. If you run this report, it is going to pull a report of all guests that are attending on a certain day. And so if we click next here, you see we get a date option, and I can come in here and say, show me the 25th. And this will give us a report of everyone that is attending that has a guest pass on the 25th. The next report down is our guest passes purchased by member, which is going to list out all of our guest pass purchases organized by member. Similarly, this one has the option to limit by date. So when we run this report, we can say, I only want guest passes between this date and this date, or maybe I want guest passes from last year. And then it will group those guest passes by the member that purchased them. And then our last report here is guest pass count. This is going to show us the total number of guests that we should be expecting on a particular day. So this would let us go and say, on the 25th, how many people are coming, and it'll say, the 25th is having 3 guests, the 26th you'll have 10, and so on and so forth for whatever date range you like, and it'll let you know how many people you should expect each day. It's a great report to run and provide to whoever is managing that physical location, so they know how many people should be arriving that specific day. Our last button here is the Add Guest Pass button. This is where we can come as an administrator and add a guest pass either for our own account, or we have the option when we click this button to add a guest pass for another member. So if we received, say, a phone call or an email from a member that said, hey, would you please add a guest pass for me and bringing my 2 friends, instead of having the member log in and do it themselves, you do have the option to do it for them. The member still does have the option to come to the website and do it themselves. So you can manage that either of those ways. When you click on Add Guest Pass, this is what the Adding Guest Pass screen looks like. It's very similar to the screen that the members see, except for as administrators, we have the option to either purchase the pass for ourselves, or because we're an administrator, we have the option to purchase the guest pass for another member. And choosing that option then gives us this member select button, where if you've used ClubExpress for any amount of time, you're probably familiar with this member selection tool. We can search by last name and say, this is a guest pass that we are purchasing for Colleen Carter to bring, say, friends to the swimming pool. I will come to the rest of this guest pass configuration here momentarily once we're actually signing up a guest for a friend. For now, I'm going to cancel this screen and go back to our guest pass manager page, and we'll take a look at actually managing and viewing these guest passes. So in the search for guest passes area, we can search by a number of things. If you leave everything blank and just hit search, it'll show you all of your purchased guest passes. Otherwise, we can either search by the member that purchased the guest passes. We can also search by when the guest passes were purchased with a between this date and this date. So the start date and finish date of when the guest passes were purchased. Or we can choose to search by the date of the visit. This is probably more likely to be used a little bit more than the purchase date, because this will tell us everyone that is planning on coming to our location between, say, today and next week. And so then we can get an at a glance look at how many people we should expect straight from the screen. We do then have the option to limit this to only people that have paid for their guest passes or not paid. If they have not paid for their guest pass yet, then there should be an option to submit payment for that guest pass. Or you can say both, where you can say, I don't care if they've paid or not. I want to see everyone that has either begun the process for ordering guest pass or has already finished and paid. The last option down here is release waiver signed or not. So if we check this box, we will only see the guest passes for people that have signed or that have not signed that waiver. So this is everyone that we are still waiting on the waiver to be signed for. If we uncheck this box, then we will see everyone, including people that have signed the waiver included with guest pass sign up. Once we've searched for and we have the results for who we are showing these guest passes for, we have this maintain option over here on the right-hand side. You have two options here. You have the trash can that you'll see all over ClubExpress. This just lets you remove a guest pass. So if it's already a paid guest pass and we cancel it, they would get a refund in the form of a credit to their account. If they have not paid for it and you cancel it, it would just remove the guest pass and the transaction would be removed from their profile. If you click on this eyeball here, we have the option to view guests, and this will give us a summary of the guests that are planning on attending. So I'm going to start with this order of Martin Smith. I placed a guest pass order for myself, and I already signed this waiver. So you'll see the number of waivers signed is 1, the number of guests is 1. So everyone attending on this day has already signed the waiver for attending this day. And this is for 2 days. So it's valid for the 19th and the 20th because it's a 2-day stint at this location. If I click on this eyeball, I'll see a summary of who's attending, and you'll see the member name over here was Martin Smith. That's who purchased the guest pass. And this guest pass was purchased for me because I'm not a member of the Northwest Balloon Club. There's my name. There's my email address. There's a fake phone number. And you can see the release status is signed. And then I can click on this eyeball right here to view the signature that was attached to the guest pass. So once they sign that waiver, there is a signature attached to it, and I can click this eyeball to take a look at that signature. If they have not signed the waiver, we have different options when we view the guest pass. So if we go over here to Colleen Carter, Colleen has signed up 2 guests. And if I click on the eyeball, you'll notice it's a little bit different. These are 2 fake guests that we signed up, and you'll see the release status is not signed. And I have 2 options here. I have a pencil and I have a letter. When I click on the pencil, I have the option to change information about the guest. So this is where I can say, maybe I'm not bringing this person, I'm bringing someone else, and I can come in and change the name of the person that guest passes for. Or maybe if they're not getting the right email or text message, I can come in here and I can change their email address or their mobile phone. And then this next icon over here is the resend email option. So when a guest pass is added for a member, an email is sent to that guest requesting that they sign the release liability waiver for them to be allowed to visit this location. If they have not signed it, we can resend that email to them. So if they didn't get it one way or another, we can keep sending it to them, say, hey, here's a reminder, please fill this waiver out before you come to the physical location that your guest passes are for. There is an extra option on this page that these can serve an alternate function. If your organization has text messaging enabled, you will see an extra option in these edit options page. So there will be an extra option down here at the bottom. This demo site does not have text messaging, so that option is not available. If you do have text messaging, you will see an extra option here that says send waiver by text message. And you can choose to send it by a text message instead of an email. If that's the case, whenever someone signs up for a guest pass, the guests will instead receive a text message and not an email. And the text message will include the link to the liability waiver as well. So if it is set up for text and we come back here Instead of resend email here, it would be resend text message. And so then you can, instead of sending them an email again, you can choose to send them a text message again and let them know, hey, you need to sign this release before you show up in person. So let's go ahead and hop over to what this looks like for your members. So I'm going to go back to my homepage, and you'll see I've added here on the menu guest passes. I'm logged in as Martin Smith, and I am not only an administrator, I'm also a member of the organization. So I have two ways of purchasing guest passes. I can do it as an administrator, or I can do it as a member. If I click on guest passes right here on the menu, it's going to take us to this screen. This is where we can come to review all of the guest passes that we've purchased. And this is where we can also go to click on this button over here on the right-hand side that says purchase guest passes. There is a second way to get to this screen. If I go up here to my member profile, and you don't have to be an administrator to get this option. All members have access to their own profile. And the members will also see this option down here in the more member options section of their member profile. You will see guest passes. And if you click on this, we will get to that same screen once again. So either way of getting here is perfectly legitimate. You'll get there to the same page either way. As a person that has purchased a guest pass, you'll see all of your guest passes that have been purchased, whether they've been paid for. You can also click on this eyeball icon to look at your guests and see whether or not they have signed their waiver. So you can see that I have not signed my waiver for my guest pass on the 21st, or yes, on the 21st. And I have the option to, the visit date is on the 25th that I have not signed the waiver for. I also have the option to look at all-time guest passes. So if you have had guest passes for, say more than 3 months, it'll initially only show you the last 3 months of guest passes that have been purchased, or you can switch this to all-time. Now that we've looked at maintaining these guest passes, let's go ahead and purchase a guest pass for someone. So if I'm going to click purchase guest pass, because I'm an administrator, again, I see the option to purchase for someone else. The only difference a normal member would see is that they would not have this option to purchase for another member. This would just automatically always be purchasing for themselves. On this screen, I get a few options. I get the option to select a start date. This is when I will be visiting the physical location, say, the swimming pool or the golf course. Let's say I'm going to go golfing on the 30th. And then I have two other configurations here. I have the number of days. How long will I be at this location? Am I visiting just 1 day, or am I visiting up to 5 days? Let's say I'm going to golf for 2 days, and you'll see now the price of this has changed to $30 because I have one person coming for 2 days. And so that's a total of $30. Then I have the number of passes. This is how many people I am bringing, and I can choose up to 10 guests that I'm bringing. Let's go ahead and say I'm just going to bring 2 guests for 2 days. And now you'll see the price has changed to $60 because now each person is being charged $30, $15 a day for their pass. The next thing you'll notice is the section where we can fill in the information about the person coming, and you'll see that we have the option to fill in their first name, their last name, and then all of their basic information, address, city, state, zip, phone number, date of birth. There's that date of birth option that I was talking about earlier. This is where you will enter their date of birth, which is how our system will limit if there is a minimum age. So if I choose, date of birth, let's say, it actually doesn't give me the option. If I choose, it won't let me choose anything earlier than 2000 or later than 2004 in September, because anything after that, I would be under the age of 18. So if I choose, the 21st of September, 2004, you'll note that if I change this manually to the 22nd and I try to click away, it'll say date of birth must be between these dates because I have to be 18 years old or older. I do have the option, you'll see at the very top here, select a previous guest. If you have purchased a guest pass for someone before, you can actually automatically pre-fill all of the information for your guest just by selecting them. So I'm logged in as Martin Smith, and Martin Smith has purchased a guest pass for me, Devin, before. So if I just hit search here, because Martin has purchased a guest pass for Devin Destrada before, I will show up on this list and I can hit select. and it'll pre-fill all of the information for Devin Destrada, things like my mobile phone, where I would get a text message about the guest pass, or my email address, where I would get an email about the guest pass. And you'll see that it auto-fills all of this information about this guest without me having to fill it in every time. So if you have members that are purchasing a guest pass, a few times a month, this saves them, maybe not a lot of time initially, but that kind of time where you're typing out all this information adds up over time. Additionally, if you are adding two guests that are, say, related, or it's a married couple and they have a lot of the same information, I can choose this copy from previous entry, and then maybe I only need to change the name and the rest of the information is the same because they live in the same place and maybe they share, a phone number and an email address, anything like that. You can just change what is necessary from the one above. Once you choose to fill in all that option, I'm going to go ahead and just say this is a test person, and you hit proceed to payment. Once you hit proceed to payment, the guest pass is already logged in the system. You just need to record payment, and it'll take us here to our payment screen where I can see guest pass on this day for 2 days for 2 people at $30 per person. And then I can choose my method of payment. As an administrator, you'll have a few options that are not available to normal members, things like receive cash and receive check. But if I was a member and not an administrator, I would have the option here to enter, say, a credit card or whatever payment option, maybe pay by PayPal, that your organization has. For now, I'm going to go ahead and say that Martin Smith paid by check, and I will enter the check number 12345. And as soon as I record payment for this, an email is going to be sent to all of my guests that have been signed up for them to fill out the waiver. So I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to swap my screen over to what that email looks like once it's received. This is the email that your guests will receive. It is going to say, the name of your organization. If you have an organization logo uploaded, it'll show up in the top right corner, and then it'll say, dear, the name of the guest. And then it'll say whatever the name of the member is has included you as a guest for the name of your club. It's a very kind of simple email. And then it gives them a link to sign a release of liability. The text message they would receive would give them very similar information. It would just say, a guest pass for this date, please sign this release of liability. It's very similar to this message that they would receive via text. If they click on this link, it is going to take them to the website, and it will drop them right on the liability release page. So I'm going to go ahead and click this link and show you what that looks like. And so now that I've clicked that link, it has taken us back to the Northwest Balloon Club. And the person that clicked on the link will see this waiver option where you can see the waiver is for, and I can't change this information, it's for the 25th. And you'll see here's my name, Devin Destrada. This is the information that was recorded in that waiver section. So I release the demo club from liability for my safety. They have to do 2 things. They have to check this box saying, I agree to this release. And then they also have to put in their signature here. If they visit this on a mobile phone, they can just draw their signature with their finger. Or if they're on a computer, they can draw their signature with their mouse, and it just draws a little, draws their signature. And then once they're done, they hit save. And that's all they have to do. They've signed the waiver. The administrator or the email address marked as the contact person for that guest passes would get an email letting them know that those guests have registered for attendance to, the pool or the golf club. And then that's all they have to do. That's the entire membership process. The member fills in their information, and then the guest signs that waiver, and that's all. From that point on, all you have to do is show up in person and, enjoy, swimming at your club's pool. There's a few other things that I want to take a look at before we open up to questions. There are a few kind of frequently asked questions and a few configuration items that don't show up right on that page. So one thing I like to point out is the system email. So we just took a look at that waiver email. If we come over here to our communications page and click on system emails down here under setup, you can search for guest passes. And you'll see here's 2 emails related to guest passes. You've got your cancellation notice. This email is usually fine as is. It's just letting you know if a guest pass is canceled. The one that I recommend anyone who uses guest passes for you to kind of come in here and customize is this guest pass notification. The reason I recommend you update this is because the terminology here is very generic. It says, so and so has included you as a guest for guest pass. It doesn't say what it's actually for. If your guest pass is for, say, a swimming pool, you may want to come in here and add swimming pool guest pass to let people know, what it is they were signed up for. It also lets them know the date. And then another really useful thing to include in this email is you can come down here on the bottom and add either contact information about that physical location, or if you have some sort of rules, like, if you have a code of conduct for your organization when you are at an in-person location, you can put that information in this email as well. That way, that the information about how to behave when they are, at the swimming pool or at the golf course is included in that email, and that they are receiving that information. So this is a great place to put additional information about that place, as well as things like, an address for getting, directions to that place. So this is an email that I heavily recommend you come in here and modify for your own needs. The only thing is make sure that you leave the anything in between these little squiggly lines, you can leave those alone. All of that information is going to be corrected and auto-filled for you. If you have any questions about modifying a system email like this, I would refer you back to just 1 week ago. We had a webinar on system emails, and we went in depth on how to modify and how to customize your system emails. So you can go watch that webinar on our YouTube channel and kind of get a good look at how to bend this email to your needs. The last bit I have for today is just a couple frequently asked questions that we get about this module. One thing that has come up in the past is if you can have 2 different guest passes, or even more than 2. So if let's say you have, tennis courts and a swimming pool and a golf course, can you have different prices for different guest passes? Currently, no. Currently, the guest passes are set up only for one type of configuration. So that's something you would want to use maybe the reservation module for reservation manager, which you can find in the control panel, the resource scheduler. Sorry, I'm using the wrong term. The resource scheduler over here would be the way to manage multiple different pricings for multiple locations. Guest passes is for just one type of location only. And then the other question we get are guest passes purchasable for myself or for members? And the answer to that is also no. Guest passes are for purchasing access for non-members for something that is already available to members. So you can't purchase a guest pass for someone else that is already a member. Guest passes are always purchased for non-members. All right. That was my kind of overview. That's what I had prepared for today. Sam, how are we doing on questions?
We are doing really well on questions. So a couple that came up will go in order. Is there a way to maybe create a printable version of a guest pass that you might give to someone or purchase for someone?
Yes and no. There's not a printable pass. What there is a receipt that you can print. So if I quickly add just a 1-day guest pass for someone, let's say for tomorrow, and I will once again get a guest pass for a pre-entered person, and I proceed to payment. Once the payment is recorded, you get this screen where you can print a receipt. And by clicking print receipt, you can then save the receipt and maybe show up in person. You can also print invoice. That way you would have like printed proof of purchase. In terms of like tickets, not quite. You could also just show up with the email that you received and show them that you received a confirmation email for that guest pass.
Okay. And there was a question about group guest passes. If there was a way to purchase a guest pass for one single group of people as opposed to an individual person. And I'm pretty sure the way to do that would just be listing individual people. I don't think that we have the ability to accommodate a group right now.
Right. Yeah. The guest passes module does require individual information. There's not like a way to say just like, 6 people. It does require the information on, each of those people, because right now the guest passes again requires that waiver to be signed. And so we need things like email addresses or a phone number in order to send the waiver to those people for them to sign off on.
And a couple of other questions. So assuming that there are multiple events on a day, how would guests register for a specific event, and how does the administrator mark their attendance? So the guest passes are different from events. They're not actually tied to an event. So you can purchase a guest pass for someone just to come to the club facility for a day, not necessarily, like I said, tied to an event that you might be hosting. I think that if you're tying use of a club facility to an event, that again would probably be the resource scheduler, right, Devin?
Right. So it would either be resource scheduler, or you would set up your event to have, a guest registration. Yeah, Sam is absolutely correct. It is, guest passes are for just selecting a day that you want to show up in a location, not necessarily, to attend a specific event happening there. It's really built for, again, things like golf courses or tennis courts where, I just want to show up and play a game and I want to bring my friend who isn't a member. And this golf course is usually a members only location. It lets you kind of allow for those non-members to attend with you and pay whatever fee is associated with it. I always like to think of it as kind of like a gym membership where, you're a member of a gym, but you can pay, $10 extra to bring a guest. This is kind of that same idea.
And for anyone who did not catch it, Guest Passes is one of our many extra cost features. So it's not a module that is built into your website. It is a cost that you pay once and you have it for the life of your website. So the cost for the Guest Passes module is a one-time fee of $1,000. If you are interested in adding that to your club, all you have to do is give support a quick call and we can configure that on the back end for you. And like we said, it's an extra cost feature. So it's not something that's built into your site. Most of our extra or all of our extra cost modules are just like that. They're modules that not everyone really needs, but they are really useful for the handful of clubs that do have physical facilities that they want to administer guest passes for. Or even with the resource scheduler, like we've mentioned a bunch in today's webinar, not every location has facilities like a tennis court or a pool that you might want to, offer use to non-members. So if you're interested in either of those, we have plenty of videos on our YouTube channel to give you a little bit of an idea of what the resource scheduler is as well. And there was another question not related to guest passes, but if the waiver feature can be associated with an event. Yes, there is actually a release agreement that you can configure with every single one of your events. We have a lot of videos on our YouTube channel for our event calendar. And one of the options that you configure with each full event or a multi-activity event would be the release agreement. You can create a default release agreement that applies to all of your events. You can also create an individual release agreement that would appear with individual events. So at the very bottom there, you'll see that in the list of items that you can configure for this event, Devin just clicked off the cancellation or release agreement. And so that'll give you the option to configure a release of liability. And it may not necessarily be because you're going whitewater rafting. Maybe it's just something really simple like a photo release that anyone who joins, who shows up for that event, acknowledges that they may have their picture taken and they might appear on the website, or you just want to make sure that if anyone gets injured when you are rock climbing or bungee jumping, that they don't come after your club. And the release agreement does not allow electronic signatures. It is a checkbox. So it's very similar to the release agreement that members might click when they join your organization. It's similar to any terms or release agreement that you might click to accept on any app or website.
All right. Do we have any other guest pass questions?
I do not think so.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone. I was right. It's a, it's a pretty small module and it's very oriented towards a very specific need. So it's one of those modules that maybe not every organization will need, but those that have a physical location that guests can be signed up for, it's kind of purpose built for that need. So if it's something that's interesting to you, give us a call. And I want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. We'll see you at our next one.